Subtracting decimals. When subtracting decimals, we must line up the decimals. It's important that we may need to have additional zeros to line up. We will begin subtracting from the right, and we're going to work to our left. So let's look at example 1. Example 1. A 3.8-inch steel bar is cut from a 20-inch bar. Find the length of the bar after the cut, accounting for a cutting loss, the curve, of 0.125 inch. So first we're going to address this 20, and we're going to subtract this 3.8. So we're going to go 20 minus 3.8. Now, we don't have a decimal here, but we're going to need to add one right here because we need to line up all the columns. And we're going to need to have the same amount of decimal places on the top and the bottom. So we're going to add this 0 on the top. Now we can begin to subtract. So we would start on the right and go 0 minus 8, which can't be done, so we're going to borrow to the left. But we can't borrow directly to the left because it's also a 0. So we're going to need to go all the way to the 10 spot where the 2 is. And we're going to take a whole 10, make this a 1. So 2 minus 1 is 1. Then we're going to put a 10 on the 1 spot. But we need to borrow from the 1. So this 10 will become a 9. And now we're going to have 10 finally in the 10th spot. So now we have 10 minus 8, which is 2. Then we're going to bring down that decimal straight down. 9 minus 3 is 6, and then we just have a 1. So now we have 16.2 inches, but we also need to account for this cutting loss. So 16.2 minus 0.125. Now, we've lined up our decimals and our place values thus far. But we're going to need to add 2 zeros. Then we're going to start by subtracting, and we're going to start on the far right. Except we can't go 0 minus 5. So we need to go ahead and borrow all the way from this 2. So this 2 becomes a 1. Then we're going to put a 10 here. But this 10 we need to borrow from, so this will become 10 minus 1, which is 9. And now this we have a 10. So 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 2 is 7. 1 minus 1 is 0. We're going to go ahead and bring down that decimal straight down. 6 minus 0 is 6, and then we'll just bring down that 1. So what we have left over after our cut is 16.075 inches. Now let's do another example. Example 2. From the bar in example 1, an additional piece is cut. The length of the new cut is 5.2 inches. Find the length of the bar after the cut, accounting for a cutting loss of 0.125 inch. So let's go back to example 1. We have 16.075 inches. So we have 16.075, and we need to go ahead and subtract this 5.2. Now we line up our decimals. We're going to need to add additional zeros, so they're the same on the top and the bottom number, and we can begin to subtract on the right side. So 5 minus 0 is 5, 7 minus 0 is 7, 0 minus 2 is, well, it can't be done, so we need to go ahead and borrow. So the 6 becomes a 5, and we're going to go ahead and borrow that, and then we're going to make it in our 10 spot a whole 10. So 10 minus 2 is 8. Bring down that decimal. 5 minus 5 is 0, and then we have a 1. So we have 10.875 inches, except we also need to account for the cutting loss. So we're going to go ahead and subtract this 0.125. So we begin on the right. 5 minus 5 is 0. 7 minus 2 is 5. 8 minus 1 is 7. Bring down that decimal. 0 minus 0 is 0. And then we just bring down that 1. And so we're left, after both cuts, of 10.75 inches. Now let's do one last example. Example 3. Subtract the following. So we have 6.034, and we're going to go ahead and subtract this. 2.968348. Now we need to add additional zeros to make them the same amount of decimal places on both the top and the bottom. And we begin to subtract on the far right, but we notice we can't do this because it's 0 minus 8. So we have to go all the way to this 4 because all these are zeros. So this 4 will then become a 3. This will become a 10, but we need to borrow this one, so this becomes a 9. Then this becomes a 10, but we need to borrow from here. So we're going to go 10 minus 1, so it's 9. And now we can have a 10 here. So 10 minus 8 is 2. 9 minus 4 is 5. 9 minus 3 is 6. 3 minus 8 can't be done, so we're going to need to go ahead and borrow from this 3. So this 3 is a 2 now, and now this 3 becomes a 13. So 13 minus 8 is 5. 2 minus 6 can't be done, so we're going to need to go ahead and borrow, but not from the 0 because that's 0. So we have to go all the way to the 6, so this becomes a 5, and this will become a 10. This 10 will then become a 9 because we need to borrow from it. So this 2 now becomes a 12. So 12 minus 6 is 6. 9 minus 9 is 0. Bring down that decimal. Now 5 minus 2 is 3. So our answer to this problem is 3.065652.